Campus Buyers resonated with so many of you. So we want to begin to take a deeper dive into the big questions of funding surrounding this type of experience. We sent to many of your inboxes a link to a questionnaire, so please complete that to help us better assist you with bringing Campus Buyer to your communities. And additionally, we've sent you a link where we've uploaded a lot of resources, including a frequently asked questions page, pricing tiers, and various models about Campus Buyer. Those are also all posted at www.stemecosystems.org. We're going to organize our time today, first by opening up with Jamie and Jason from UBTECH. They're going to spend about 10 minutes reviewing the different models for participating. I'll then spend a few minutes introducing a toolkit that we have been developing to help ecosystems regarding some of the funding ideas. And then Buddy Harris will come on, we'll talk a little bit, and then the remaining time, which should be about 35-40 minutes, is about the questions that you have. So Jamie, Jason, you guys want to kick us off with talking a little bit about these different models that we have available?
Sure, I'll take the lead here. Hey everybody, this is Jason Panella. I'm with UBTECH. I lead our partnerships group for education here in the US. And I want to talk just to remind those that were on the webinar last week, and then to introduce our models to those who are new today. We really have two methodologies in terms of getting to market with our Campus Buyer offering. I don't know, do you want to pull up the first slide on that, Veronica? Or Jeremy?
I do not have that. Give me 1 second. There it comes. There we go.
Sorry, everybody, about that. So this is just the Campus Buyer branding that you'll find. But this we're introducing the two models. First model is for an individual family to enroll. This is a family evaluating courses, just like I am, for my 10-year-old and my 6-year-old who will not be able to go unfortunately to a traditional outdoor camp model, or even to a location to take a coding camp this summer. We created Campus Buyer, which will afford the opportunity for a virtual robotics camp, and we've created a special offer just for ecosystems with very specific pricing for ecosystem partners to promote to their local communities.
So Jason, this particular one, this would be a scenario like me. I've my kids normally attend a camp for a week. So far, at least, I think everything is canceled. There's a couple still up in the air, but most are canceled. So this would be not through an organization, not through my school or 4-H or Girl Scouts or anything. This would just be, I want to put my girls into this camp, so I would use kind of this avenue, purchase and join.
Exactly right, Jeremy. And we also recognize that the traditional camp providers, many of them are not able to have their offering in front of their parents, and they may not even be able to facilitate at a virtual within a virtual environment. So we're giving them the opportunity to promote our camp to their communities as an offering for families.
Perfect. And what other options do we have?
So the second option, if we move a slide forward, this is an option where a community-based organization, be it a school, a higher ed institution, a local boys and girls club, for example, is planning on has the ability to facilitate and offer a virtual camp this summer. So we've created a toolkit to essentially power the content and the offering, and we're able to train up a third party's teachers, facilitators to deliver that camp on their own. So we've got that essentially priced at $299 for a beginner model and $399 for an intermediate model.
So with that first one, the facilitation will be done by kind of through you guys. Is that correct? And in this model, this would be a scenario where I've got an organization. I want all the kids in my organization to be participating kind of together, synchronously, with my own folks. So not only can I potentially keep them kind of employed during this time, but also kind of maintain those relationships. So as an organization owner, my people would be running this camp with my participants. Is that how that's structured?
Correct. In the first model, UBTECH is employing the facilitators, and we are employing them through STEM ecosystems, many STEM ecosystems partners. In the second model, the facilitation would be on the local entity, community-based organization.
That makes sense. And what's the third?
Right now, these are the two options. Depending on the community-based organizations, logistics and operations, there may be some nuances to work out in terms of exactly how that model takes shape.
Got it. So, what about the experiences? What are these camps kind of going to look like when we get into them?
Great question. Going to turn that over to Jamie to walk us through. Well, first of all, let me comment on pricing. The Jamie will talk a little bit more about the fabric of the experience. For camp pricing, this is the pricing for ecosystems. We have a $350 per enrollment price, and I want everybody to understand that underneath this value proposal is a very high-end robotics kit, and it's a big differentiator for us. Many camps that are out there that offer this type of experience do not afford the kit into the home. Do not have the kit. The kit is not kept by the student after completing the camp, and that's a big difference between how these are traditionally run and how we're proposing to run. So $350 inclusive of the hardware for beginner, and $425 inclusive of the hardware for intermediate is special ecosystems pricing.
And that pricing's really solid. I mean, and I might be remembering incorrectly, but I think that beginner U kit alone, if you just go and buy it, is somewhere near that price, right? Well,
the beginner kit alone is $299.
Right. So basically, you're buying a kit, and for $50, getting a week of direct
facilitated camp. Correct.
Awesome.
This is a larger matrix here. They're introducing some additional options around how camps can be purchased. So we do have, as I mentioned, the 1 week options at $350 and $425, but parents could also buy if they know they would like a 2 week option. There is that available at $600 and $675. Then that's STEM ecosystem pricing. You can see in the middle where UBTECH will be pricing these direct from our website. And then the third column is the second model, the Toolkit option, and that comes with everything from the course content, professional development, and the kit at that price tag without our facilitators.
Got it. So then the camps themselves, and I think that's where you're getting into now with Jamie. George Walker is asking in the Q&A. He wasn't able to make it to the last session, and he's asking what age group each of the kind of kits and the camp offerings are targeted towards.
I'll go ahead and take that question before I start talking about the individual camps. I think that we like to talk more about skill level than ages necessarily. In terms of, we would recommend a sort of the beginner's kit for students who are coming in with no experience whatsoever, and the intermediate is a little bit higher level. If you want to pin it down to age groups, we would say that the beginner kit is more for mid to upper elementary, and the intermediate kit is more for middle school, if we have to identify ages that way.
But I think if I remember correctly, those are somewhat loose. If I have a child who's been doing robotics and robotics kits for 5 years, but they're only 7, and they're really, really good at it, they could jump into one of those older camps. It's really kind of skills based. Is there anything available, or could there be? The beginner kit camp, anyone can kind of join. But is there something available that says, here are the types of skills that you should have in order to join the intermediate camp?
Yes. When we open registration, there will be sort of a self-assessment associated with that, where parents and students can go through a very short list of questions that will sort of help them evaluate their skill level and point them in the direction of the right camp for them. But I will also say that if there is a student who has 0 experience, but they're really, really interested in the topic that's associated with the intermediate kit, they absolutely can still join. We are designing the content and the instruction so that even kids with 0 experience won't feel left behind by joining one of the higher level camps. We want everyone to feel included, and no matter what level you're at, if that's a topic that's super interesting to you, then go ahead and join, because the instructors will make those accommodations for kids who don't have experience.
Perfect.
So let's talk a little bit about what each camp is about. So for the beginner kit, we have 2 camp options. One is an introduction to robotics, coding, and engineering. Students will build several different models that are prescribed through our UKIT app, and then they will work on some of their own customized models. So it's teaching them about the engineering design process and how do we come up with new designs and new builds for robots, and how can they be used in real life situations. They will get an introduction to block-based coding as well, and be able to code those robots. In the second option for the beginner kit, this one is going to be all about animals and really looking at how robots can mimic the movements of animals and humans, and how can we design robots to mimic those movements. So there will be sort of a biology element to this one as well. For instance, an example of what might happen is, having the students think about, what happens to baby birds when they fall out of the nest and, they have to be sort of rehabilitated by humans. Well, we don't want the birds to imprint on the humans as their mom, right? So could we design a robot that can feed the baby birds, but also look like the mama bird, so that when they go back out in the wild, that, they are not imprinted on a human as their mama. So there is an element of biology to that one, and we will be looking at having the students think about how to accurately program robots to move like animals and humans. In the UKIT Intermediate, we also have 2 options. The first one is also about robotics, coding, and engineering, but in this one we also introduce sensors. So really thinking about how robotic sensors are like human senses. What are the things that they do the same? They both take in information that is then supplied to either the human brain or the robot brain, and then make decisions about what actions to take based on that information. So this will be, they'll learn coding, they'll learn, the engineering design process, they will learn about sensors, and a little bit of AI as well. And then in the last option, which is called a helping hand, this one is all about thinking about how robots can make things in our community better, make the lives of humans easier. So the students will be tasked with coming up with a problem that they see in the world, doing a little bit of research, like what's something that robots could be used for to help make our lives easier or solve a problem. For instance, one of the most obvious things in the situation we're in right now is, could robots be used in medical situations where it's not safe for doctors and nurses to be in a room with someone who is positive with the coronavirus? Could a robot go in and deliver their medication? Could a robot, be used in disinfecting the hospitals or public spaces? So really looking at what's going on in the world and identifying a problem, and then designing a robot that could help solve that problem or make it easier on humans.
I think that makes sense. We have some questions that I know we originally talked about just sort of having questions at the end, but you guys all know me long enough to know that I don't ever do things the way they're written down on paper. And there are a couple of questions that I think sort of make sense right now. Caitlin Hunter, Caitlin, are you there with us to ask your question? You should be able to unmute. There
Hi, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I just was curious, what is the expectation for each kit with regards to parent instruction or support for the curriculum? I know maybe everybody is working from home or has other responsibilities, so just curious about what the parent responsibility would be.
We are designing these camps to have little to no parent responsibility. I mean, obviously, if a parent wants to participate and help their kids, that's great. But we are designing it so that, you know, the kids are going to be live with an instructor for 2 hours a day to provide assistance. But then the instructor will also be available throughout the day to answer questions. If the students are working on some offline activities and they get stuck, then they can reach out to the instructor as opposed to, you know, asking their parent for help. So we are designing them in a way that no parent help will be needed, but obviously parents can always jump into the class with the student if they want to, and also assist in any way that they would like, but not required.
Perfect.
Thank
And
you.
then Christina Lawson is asking how many students can use a single kit?
So the class is designed, obviously with the sort of stay-at-home social distancing rules in mind, and for each kid to have their own kit. However, if we were using these kits in a classroom situation, we would generally say that up to 4 kids could use a kit, but the preferred sort of ratio would be 1 kit for every 2 students, because you don't want it to be a situation where you have 4 kids sitting around a kit and there's 2 kids building and 2 kids watching, right? We want everybody to be fully engaged. So when we do sort of say that the 4-to-1 ratio works in a classroom, that is with teacher supervision and really assigning those students particular roles so that everybody has a role in the collaboration. So for these camps, I would suggest not more than 2 students per kit.
All right, so if and that of course would rely on the fact that those kids are, you know, allowed to be together. So, you know, in those situations
Right.
we're talking something like siblings or something where that could be used.
Yes, please don't gather them together just to share a kit.
That is probably not the best thing to do. Carrie Murphy has, I think, a specific question about how this sort of all lays out. Carrie, are you there with us? You may have to click unmute if you haven't.
All right, I found it. I couldn't find it the whole time. It had some other audio option and I could never find it until right now.
You weren't allowed to unmute until just now. That's why it's
Oh.
so it's not your fault. Not your fault.
I was panicking.
All right, so Carrie, you have some questions about what this looks like, kind of how it lays out from an instructional perspective.
Yeah, it sounds like you're making it sound like it's synchronous and there are like quote unquote counselors if you like were running a camp, or if not, if you are at home, someone else is teaching your kid. And I'm not sure how that works or what it looks like.
Yeah, so it is synchronous in a web conferencing tool. We're going to be using Zoom just like we're using today. So it would be this type of situation where the kids log into Zoom with their video. The instructor would be logged in as well with his or her video, so that, you know, he can screen share the app that we have and show them exactly where to go on the app. He or she can actually show different steps during the build and help the students through that process. So yes, 2 hours will be live synchronous meeting in a web conferencing tool just like this. And then we will provide activities for the students to do offline in between meetings. However, we have also designed it so that if a student is unable to complete those tasks offline, they will not feel behind when they come the next day. They're more of enrichment and sort of going beyond activities. We're also really making sure that we think about the age of the children in these classes and building in some breaks into that synchronous time, because it's hard for us to sit in a Zoom for 2 hours straight, right? So it's going to be even harder for kids to do that. So we are building in breaks into the instruction process where, you know, they get up and do some stretching, go get a snack, you know, bathroom breaks, all of that. So, you know, taking into consideration that, you know, nobody likes to sit in one place for 2 hours, right?
You should just have a design a robot that looks like you that you can put in front of the camera during your school Zoom sessions so that your teacher won't know that you've left.
All the kids would be on board with that, I think, Jerry.
I think we're a bunch of teachers here that are listening.
Carrie, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, I also run the NSTA STEM forum. Have you been involved with that?
I have not.
Oh, okay. So we have to plan a virtual conference and a regular conference just in case. So I'm just trying to figure out, do you have I want to see, it's really hard to know who is going to be good at online STEM teaching. And I was wondering if you had like a video of it or some kind of way to like show us the best way to do it.
I absolutely feel your pain. I actually was in online learning for many, many years. I actually started in online learning in 2001 and taught my first class on dial-up. So I absolutely agree with you. There is a difference in good virtual online teaching and learning and sort of what all the teachers have been forced into right now, which I've been calling emergency remote teaching. And they're trying very hard to learn all those techniques. But, you know, really good virtual learning is planned and thought about ahead of time because there are absolutely different ways to effectively engage the kids in a virtual learning environment than in a face-to-face. And I absolutely believe that all our teachers are capable of learning that through some PD and instruction. I just think, you know, they've been thrust into this situation and it's been really hard to sort of make that move quickly. And they've done an amazing job for the most part. You know, kudos to all of them for all the things I see online that they're doing to make this work. But we are also designing a very intentional professional development for the instructors that we hire. All of our instructors will either be certified teachers and have taught STEM in the classroom, or in the case of private school teachers, sometimes those teachers don't necessarily have to have certification, but they will have to have a minimum of 3 years experience teaching in a private school. So we are making sure that our instructors are experienced teachers who have you know, at least some knowledge of how to interact with kids and teach on a regular basis. These won't be college kids, not that college kids are bad at this, and I know a lot of us use them for our camp instruction. But I think in this case, since there is that added level of not only learning how to teach STEM, robotics, and coding, but how to do it effectively online, we are sort of setting that baseline of our instructors first. And then we will be providing them with professional development and making sure that they do have those effective skills before we set them loose.
That's awesome. So have you done this before?
I have done this when I was actually in the online learning world, but we have not done this at UBTECH before.
Yeah, so this is a brand new camp that's being designed specifically to respond to this current situation. But you're right, Carrie, you know, we've been having this conversation for 10 years, right, about the difference between pedagogical content knowledge and technological pedagogical content knowledge. And now we're adding virtual technological pedagogical content knowledge just to make the acronyms and the ridiculous words even worse. Because it's not the same thing. An amazing teacher may not be an amazing virtual teacher. So that's a big part of the design of this program, both from the ecosystem side and the UBTECH side, is to make sure that all instructors are spun up to be able to effectively do this. So it looks
can I just add one more thing, Jeremy? I also just want to add, we are hiring teachers. So if you know teachers who you think would be awesome at this, awesome STEM teachers who you think can really jump in and adapt to that virtual teaching pedagogy, as Jeremy mentioned, please have them come to our website and apply. It's a very short application. We'd love to have them.
And there's a posting both on the ecosystems page and I think on the UBTECH page as well. And I'm sure that somebody on the UBTECH team can throw that in the chat real quick as well to make sure that that gets out there. Jamie, anything else on the kind of outlay side?
This is a quick slide that looks at sort of when each of these camps will be offered. We're sort of looking at staggering it. So for instance, if someone is really interested in taking both of the beginner kit options, they can do that sort of 2 weeks in a row. And both of the intermediate options, they can do that 2 weeks in a row. So we're staggering the offerings of these camps throughout the summer. And we hope that everybody can find a week that works for them.
Perfect. It looks like the majority of the remaining questions are specifically about funding. So I think that we should, if it's okay with everyone, kind of continue on to talk a little bit about the funding toolkit and talk to Buddy a little bit about some of the funding avenues, and then we can get back to Q&A for the tail end. We're really excited about this, and here's this funding toolkit that that I mentioned before. You can access this at stemecosystems.org/camp-aspire, camp-aspire. And there's a number of pieces within that toolkit, sample letters that you can just, fill in the blanks and get ready for your specific funders in your local area. List of potential funders, both specific and kind of within verticals, support for government funding, and a one-pager, which is, in my opinion, probably the most critical component. There's also a scholarship opportunity that we just kind of zoomed past that we'll go back to maybe right now. I'm not clicking clearly, and it is back. So there is this really exciting scholarship opportunity, which is basically that based on the number, there's a kind of right off the top, UBTECH is offering $100,000 in scholarships across the country to launch this project. And in addition, depending on the sale of camps that different regions put together, additional scholarships will be created up to a potential and a goal of $1 million in scholarships. We really, really want to know that this is, everyone to know that this is an opportunity for every child to be able to touch a high quality robot, to really dig in and use. This is an equity issue, as we know, and we've been talking about. I'd like to, oops, I just lost myself for a second. Jason, can you talk a little bit about those scholarships and kind of what the plan is there?
I think you just described it pretty well there, Jeremy. Look, since we launched the education group in the U.S., UBTECH has taken a hard stance on equity, and it's all about our ability to extend these types of experiences with robotics and AI to communities and to learners that may not traditionally touch it if they were only afforded the opportunity in a after school type scenario or special club. So the scholarships component of this is in line with our more global view on equity. And as you mentioned, the 100,000 is really just a Kickstarter. We hope that with your help throughout the ecosystem communities and with funders, we can drive this up towards $1 million scholarship goal nationwide, and that's just during the summer.
And that's a really exciting opportunity and kind of a big give from UBTECH. So I know that the community that I live in is really excited about that. And we're hoping for sure in the Cleveland area to expand beyond that initial offering through getting these kits in the hands of kids in the area. I'd like to talk a little bit with Buddy Harris. If you're from Ohio, you know Buddy. He spent years in the Ohio Department of Education. Buddy, I know you've done some research about the CARES Act and other potential sources of funding. Can you give us your thoughts a little bit about whether it's possible to use federal or state funding to channel into this?
Yeah, sure thing, Jeremy. I hope everybody's doing well. I wanted to point out a couple of things before I jump into some of the specific resources that we have. And the first thing is, I think it's just sort of fundamental to fundraising in general, and that is the idea that all fundraising is going to be more successful if it's mission driven by your organization. You have clear goals and outcomes set forth for your project, and it aligns to the mission of the actual funder. And so, like, I want to implore you to think about that as you're thinking about funding, you're thinking about your camps, you're thinking about where robotics fit in your bigger STEM plan as a way to locate your approach to any type of federal funding. And so on the next screen there, I believe, there is, I have a few questions that I thought might be helpful for you to kind of think about when you're thinking about possible funding sources. And so the first thing is, if your organization currently receives federal funding, that might be an ultimate place to start. But if you don't, you're going to need to look for some different ways to think about your funding. Additionally, does your organization that you represent right now, do you actually partner really closely with a school system? Because that's really going to inform how we approach what opportunities are out there. Are you a nonprofit? Do you have your 501c3? And do you typically approach corporate foundations? And then the other piece, and this is more of a philosophical thing that I want to make sure that we talk about when we think about funding is, does this camp, are you thinking about it as a camp, as a discrete project that you can offer your kids, or really does it align to bigger efforts within your region? One of the things that we always talk about why we like the ecosystem so much is because the goal really is to connect all of these different organizations and to make sure that everybody is rowing in the same direction. And this camp option is no different. And so I'd ask you to kind of think about that as I'm going through some of the resources. If you scroll down, I won't go through this too much in depth, but it's important to think about. A lot of you have probably heard about the CARES Act that is being provided by the federal government, $30.7 billion overall, and 13.2 directed specifically to K-12. What you're looking at there is actually a resource that is going to be posted on, or is posted on with a toolkit, correct, Jeremy? So it's going to be on the website. But what I did was I pulled out a couple of the important sections that speak directly to the camp effort. So under the CARES Act, money is distributed through the state, and this is a hugely important thing for you to think about. It passes through the state, and then ultimately districts are able to apply from the state. Why is this important? It's because there's some very general guidelines for how this money could potentially be spent, and I'll talk about a couple of those in just a second. But the key is that accessing these funds is going to be a process that many of you are very familiar with. You're going to have to go through, your district's going to have to go through the state in order to access those funds. And we know that every one of your states most likely has its own process for distributing federal funds. And so I can't emphasize that enough. Even though we're talking about general guidelines here and the possibility that this money is available for you, each state's going to be a little bit different. The districts know how to access that, and so it's really important that you're connected with your district on that. But if we can go down, Jeremy, I do want to point out a couple of the 12 uses for the funding. I highlighted 3. The first one does speak specifically to the purchasing of educational technology. So clearly the robotics kits would fall into that. Many of you and your districts and other districts are dealing with what it means to be one-to-one at this point. So there are going to be a lot of probably a lot of districts with really taking a hard look at how they're spending their money on technology. But clearly it seems that the robotics would fall into that. The second piece would be activities that are related to summer learning. As all of you know, our kids are, there's the traditional summer slide, and they're facing twice that at this point. And so the federal government is allowing funds to be spent in ways that are going to support that summer learning, and certainly this falls into that. And then the last one I want to mention, because this is where I'd like to throw out a particular challenge to you a little bit. If we could scroll down just a little bit to see that third arrow right there, other activities. So this is a general catch-all that's included in the CARES Act. For allowable spending, other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation and the continuity of services, et cetera. So this is where I want you to think a little bit differently. I think it's easy to have a funding conversation about what's allowable and how can we make sure these types of programs happen. What I would like to throw out there for you is to think about this. this pandemic, I think, offers us an opportunity to really think about how we not do things the same as we've always done them. And we've thought about robotics as being something that's really isolated either through the classroom or through after-school clubs, for example. But what I think the opportunity that we have in front of us is to really think about how we can engage kids differently and where robotics fits into that. And so in that catch-all phrase, I think that allows you to think about how can our district do things differently from now on? How can we ensure kids are engaged, not only in school, but also at home? And so I point those out. There's a couple of other state opportunities that are certainly worth taking a look at. But if you're not a state, ultimately what this means is if you're not a district, or if you don't receive federal funds right now, you might have to look for some other possibilities. One possibility might be that you're working closely with your district, and so I think that we're here at UBTECH to help you think creatively about that, about the relationship you have with your district and how you could have a collaborative program where, you're serving the kids in the district and they could potentially access federal funds. So we're happy to help you think that through. But the second type of funding, and if we kind of scroll down through there, I want to mention, and this is for those of you who are not actually part of a district, you're most likely very familiar with different types of foundation funding that's available. I have a couple of links there. One, stemgrants.com. If you're not familiar with that, it provides a great overview of a bunch of different types of STEM grants. And then the National Education Association Foundation has a nice grants guide. And then below that, I have a few examples. So the foundation fund piece, so I've given you some examples here that you can take a look at. But this, again, I would like to to think about not so much out of the context of your ecosystem where there's potentially grant opportunities. Sure, there are lots of them out there. But I think at the heart of these relationships that you have in the ecosystem is access to corporations and foundations in your community that are interested in supporting what you do. And so as you're taking a look at the different possibilities, for example, around Honda or NASA, maybe there's someone right around the corner in an organization that you're already working with that recognizes the need to support innovative education strategies throughout the summer for the kids that you're already working with. And so I'd like to challenge you to kind of think about that first as a way to leverage your relationships with your ecosystems. Look for the funding sources from corporations, from corporate foundations, and then certainly start looking for ones that we provided resources to. And then the last thing I want to point out, and this is an example of a friend of ours in Detroit who has created, if you're looking for something fairly immediate, he's actually created for a project that he's working in Detroit, a GoFundMe page. And this is a way to access those funders out there that maybe aren't as institutionally connected to the ecosystems, but are otherwise interested in supporting your projects, that allows you to crowdsource this. And so one of the things I want to point out, as I'm kind of running through these very quickly, I'm doing so because timing is of the essence. Like, we recognize that that's the case. And for federal funds, for example, your states are accessing those at the beginning of June. They're having to create some sort of a distribution method to the local level, and the timing may not be right for that. But at the same time, you may be able to get something off the ground really quickly if you wanted to approach it with a crowdsourcing method. Similarly, the closer you are to the funder in your community, whether it be a corporation or a community foundation, the quicker the access you're going to have to the funds if they recognize the immediacy of the need that you have. And so, so I want to implore you to kind of think about what type of organization you are, where the funding typically is that you receive, and access the appropriate funding that way. So think about it holistically and not just as kind of a checklist of where there are some possible opportunities.
Well, thank you, buddy. There's really a lot of opportunities there. You can find all those in that toolkit on stemecosystems.org/aspire-camp, or camp-aspire rather. I think that it's really important to mention as well. I know there are some folks on here with us right now that aren't necessarily associated with their ecosystem already. So you can go to STEMecosystem.org. You can see a map there. This pricing is only available within the ecosystems. The camps, I believe, are probably available outside of an ecosystem for not that kind of awesome pricing, but those are still available. But if you look on that map, there's a really, really good chance that you live within the jurisdiction of an ecosystem. So this is an opportunity, if you're not already associated, to reach out to that ecosystem. There's contact information for those local ecosystems. One of the goals, whether or not you're already involved with an ecosystem, of this entire ecosystem initiative is to come together in situations like this and seek funding together. If you're new to this world, funders really, really, really prefer a couple of scenarios. They really like when multiple organizations are coming together to seek funding. And they really, really like when organizations are seeking funding from multiple funders to kind of bring that all together. So this is an opportunity for you to do that, to fund this really great opportunity. I'd like to go to some questions here at the end. The first question is from Brenda Bonninger, who unfortunately is not on the call anymore, so hopefully someone can reach out to her, but I think it's a good question. She's saying, I work at a science museum in Fort Lauderdale. Could my educators be hired for this program so that our museum could be a hub for your camps? So could she use her own educators through, I think, that second model, Jason, that you shared with us, to kind of run something like this?
Yeah, I think I'd like to dig in with her specifically on the model she envisions. Meaning, is it a case where we would just need to prepare her existing staff, or would we to deliver through her facilitated model, or is it that we need to hire and then potentially staff a specific Camp Aspire opportunity, through her? So I think I'd have to dig in a little bit more on which model fits.
But both of those could be an option.
Absolutely.
Either there could be
probably
something
wants to hire them immediately.
Sure, yeah, and so we could have an opportunity where I see kind of three worlds where her instructors are all just signing up to be instructors for you. There's an opportunity where her instructors are signing up to be instructors for a program that will be housed within that organization. And I had a third one that I already forgot, but lots of different potentials here for how all of this could kind of lay out. Christina Armstrong has a question about pricing that I think I had as well. Christina, are you there with us? You'll have to hit the unmute button.
Yes, I am here.
Hi,
And
Christina.
thank you all so much for this program. It's really incredible what you're doing. And my question is about community-based organizations, where the $299 fee or the $399, is that per teacher that your organization will be having present, or is that just a flat fee where if we want to do the basic levels, we just pay $299 plus buy the kits?
Yeah, Christina, that's actually the $299 and the $399 covers it's the whole toolkit. So if you were adopting the beginner, let's Jamie's go back to Jamie's thought for a moment around the two levels, right? The beginner and the intermediate courses. She got two courses at each level. So if you were adopting you would get the two beginner courses for $299. From a curriculum standpoint, you would receive one kit for every one kit at $299 for every child. So it's not necessarily teachers. It's everybody would get the virtual professional development as it relates to the teachers in this model, but you'd be buying kit by kit by kit at $299. And actually it's not that way. We have a minimum of 10 for that model to keep it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. I'd like to ask Heather Delity to ask her question. Say it again.
Delighty.
Delighty. Okay.
Like delightful.
Delightful. Heather, you are delighty. Can you ask your question about after-school programs, please?
Yeah, we have our district has an after-school program, and I think that it's a county-wide grant. And I can find out the details on one of the instructors for that after school. And we usually do a robotics component in a robotics summer camp. And we're trying to do our after school program virtually right now, but I'm wondering if we can use this program through our grant. And if that's something that you guys have worked with, that would be something we'd be able to figure out the details and make that work.
Jamie, do you want to? I think so. Jamie, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we need to look at the requirements of the grant just to make sure that, you know, what we have is absolutely in line with that grant. And then you'd probably want to reach out to whoever the grant funder is and,
Right.
you know, show them the details of this opportunity and make sure that they are okay with the substitution.
Okay, great.
And I'll tell you that this is certainly not, you know, in every scenario, but I know that I've been finding that the funders that I work with and that the people that I know work with are a lot more open right now than probably they ever have been or ever will be again, to altering the kind of the specific minor scopes of grants and working with people. What everyone's focusing on right now is they just want to get things in kids' hands and get kids engaged, whatever the avenue is. So I don't know your specific funder, but I think there's a really solid chance that they'd be willing to make whatever concessions are needed to make that happen.
Great.
David Valentine, you had a question that frankly I had as well about my own kids. David, are you there with us?
Yes.
Hey, David.
I was just asking if I have a student who wants to do an intermediate kit and they do the kit for the camp, the Camp Aspire, and pay the $425. Do they have to pay an additional $425 for like the second intermediate course if they did the consecutive weeks? Thank you.
No, actually, good question. We have an add-on week, and Jamie, I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe it's $200 in addition to add on the second week. Does that sound right, Jamie?
Sorry, I'm furiously trying to look it up because I want to make sure I give you the right information. So if you guys want to ask another question and circle back, I will have the correct information for you
maybe
shortly.
I'll just tap that. We can get back to you on that, but there
That's
is an add-on week, but you could also buy the 2 weeks. You know, if you want to do the 2 weeks, you could buy the 2 weeks up front. And I believe there's an ecosystem price on that as well.
All right, so we'll get that pricing. Clearly, this is all something that is being developed right now. You guys are kind of in the process of watching the birth of a brand new program. What that means is that some of these things aren't on the tips of everyone's fingers like they normally would be, but we can absolutely find that information for you. Jason, Jamie, would that work? Could you do something similar with siblings? If you had two siblings who wanted to do two different camps that were the same tier of kit, so both the same kit, would that be an add-on as well?
That is an excellent question, and I don't think we have an answer for that, but we will come up with an answer and get back to you. Because
that's
I
what I do. I ask you questions that you
right.
don't have. Sorry. Perfect.
You're really testing me today, Jeremy.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I was put on earth to do, to test you.
No, you're fine. That is a great question.
Here's another question that I'm not going to make you live, Robert, because it's a quick question, but Robert's asking, how are the materials delivered to participants? Are those drop shipped directly to each participant? Do they go, if it's a community organization that's running it, do they all go to that community organization who then has to ship it? How do those distributions work?
Good question. We've been working through some of the logistics over the last couple of days, so very timely. What I'll say first is we're going to need all registrations in about 2 weeks in front of the actual course start date. And that will give us enough time to assure that the hardware makes it to both of those options, Jeremy, that you mapped out. So first could be that the shipment of U-kits arrives at a school or YMCA or whatnot, or the second option would be that all of the U-kits for that course arrive with the families in time.
So I would have the option, if I'm a community organization operator, I would have the option to directly ship to participants in that scenario, or is directly to participants only when individual families sign up?
Well, the first way, I think if it's a camp operator, I think the first option would be the group of UKITs going directly to the camp operator because that's their asset, and I think that organization is going to control whether or not that asset is sort of loaned out, or maybe it's actually gifted to the family. But I think that they would need to receive the goods first. There may be that sort of, I haven't worked that through, but there may be that option where the camp operator asks us to send directly into the home. I just need to work through that on a case by case.
If we have a scenario, and if we have a scenario where I'm a camp operator, I decide that I want to own the kits so that I can do this again. I ship them out to loan, they come back. But 75% of the kits come back perfectly fine. A couple come back missing a couple pieces. A couple come back with some pieces broken. Is there a way for me to replenish those kits without buying a whole new kit?
Jamie, have you thought about that a little bit?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? I was
Is there
typing
a
in the
way,
pricing.
if we're thinking about a scenario where we're loaning kits out, which I think frankly is probably in the minority. I think most people are thinking about giving, but we're thinking about loaning, and we bring them back, and there's a handful of components that are missing or broken, as you know will happen. Do I have an avenue for just replenishing pieces of kits? Can I buy, I've got a kit here somewhere that I could open up. Can I buy just a bag of the little connector stick thingies, which probably have a more technical name?
I really like your name, Jeremy. But yes, we will, obviously if they're brought back in, you want to clean them and sanitize them and inventory them and make sure that all your pieces are there. But yes, we will have an avenue for the purchase of additional pieces that are missing.
Perfect. Joan Perch is asking, and this is a question that was sort of asked earlier, but she wasn't on in the beginning, and I think it's worth kind of saying again. What's the best way for somebody to pursue this opportunity? She's specifically talking about Lorain Community College in Ohio, about setting this up as a camp through Lorain Community College, and she wants to know what her best avenue is for starting that conversation.
Oh, Lorraine, we need to schedule a call. Either first step through STEM Ecosystems and Veronica and Alyssa, or directly with me or my sales team. So, but that sounds exciting, and I'm interpreting that her opportunity would be a toolkit opportunity, as we described it, right, where they would facilitate the camps.
It seems that way. Yes.
Yeah. Great. So that's a great starting point for the discussion, because I think we've in any discussion I'm in about this opportunity, we first have to discuss whether or not facilitated by UBTECH or facilitated by said camp operator.
We have time for just about we have 5 or 6 minutes, so just enough time for a question or two. Peter Burns asked a question in the chat, not in the Q&A, but I think it's an interesting one that I'm not sure if there's an opportunity here or not. Peter, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, yeah. Can you ask your question about other content?
So, well, you actually answered one of the questions for me, but and I actually run a camp here. And I'm in Frisco, and we run a camp annually, and obviously we're thinking about moving virtual, and so I think this presentation is pretty right on time. And so what I wanted to find out was the model, whether or not the content can be provided from your organization for us to be able to deliver that content to the students, or is there a way to secure someone from your organization to deliver the content for us? And those were the other 2 questions I wanted to answer.
Absolutely. I think Peter, it has to do, this part of the conversation has to do with what is ideal for your organization under your time constraints and your your resources and people. In an ideal, ideally, I think you would want to most likely deliver this camp through your own operation, your own brand. But I'd be willing, Jamie would be willing to talk you through, sort of some of the technical requirements and operational requirements that we are going through ourselves to become the direct deliverer of camps. So we need to go through some of that to determine whether or not it makes sense for us to simply give you the materials, train up your staff, and be ready to deliver in time.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. A couple quick hit questions. Gwendolyn Brantley's asking, just to confirm that the $299, that includes access to the instructor. So if you buy that more inexpensive kit, that includes access to the content, correct?
Yes. In fact, both weeks of content will come with the kit in that situation.
So how many hours of content is that in a course?
It's probably about 20 plus for each course, because we're providing 2 hours of the synchronous live instruction time, and then we're scoping out about 2 additional hours per day of activities that kids can do in between classes. But again, I just want to remind everybody, if kids are not able to do that during that week, they can do them at a later time, and they will not be behind when they come back the next day.
That's awesome. That's a whole lot of content, and a really high quality kit to boot. And again, like we talked about earlier, just buying the kit is barely less expensive than all of this. I feel like I'm an infomercial host right now. It's barely less expensive than all this. Can you tell us? There have been a few questions about when registration will start and where can people ask?
This was on a slide earlier, but to reiterate, registration formally opens on May 18, but we currently have a pre-registration page available, and it is we do have a link to that through the STEM Ecosystems site.
Perfect. And Pavi just asked in the Q&A whether or not once the course is over and kids have this kit, whether it's then just sort of a dead kit. Pavi, I'm sure that the UBTECH team can give you all sorts of answers, but I can tell you just from my perspective, I have one of the beginner kits in my house, and my kids have built all sorts of things, both things they found online and things they've created themselves. So there's a lot of opportunity to continue to use the robot after the course is over. In fact, that's a big benefit and a part of the course, is to really get kids spun up on thinking about how they can use this kit to solve different types of problems and to think about robotics in really actionable ways. We'll be following up with some next steps that we have. There's an interest form on STEMecosystems's.org you can complete. We'll follow up with you. This is a really good opportunity. Stay tuned. Make sure that you are signing up, filling out that form and signing up. You'll be hearing from us very soon to get all of this started. We thank you for spending this time with us. We really like to end right on time, but thank you to the folks from UBTECH for both this opportunity and for spending this hour with us. And we look forward to continuing this project as we move forward.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, Jeremy.